Hi guys, Cam back here at the Butler workshop. We're going to try and do a little bit tonight. Tomorrow we're punching up towards 40 degrees, and then on Friday we're cracking up towards 45 degrees, which is going to be around about 115 in the old money. So it's going to be too uncomfortable when I get home from work to be in here. So we're going to do a little bit in here tonight. Just back off holidays. We've been back for about 3 days now. We've been down to Torquay for 2 weeks. Had an absolutely wonderful time. We've been going down to Torquay now, the same spot for the last 16 years. And where we stay at Torquay, we're only about 10-15 minutes drive from where we live. And people probably think, what sort of a holiday is that? But heading down to Torquay, to me, is like going into a bit of a time warp. It's very much, or still very much has the feel of the 50s and 60s down there at the beach. It's a place where you go down and you just tend to slow down. And it almost forces you to slow down, so it's a wonderful feeling down there, and yeah, we absolutely love it. So we'll continue that on as we go. I'm going to throw a couple of happy snaps up of our holiday, so if you want to stick around at the end and have a bit of a look around where we stay and a bit of the campsite. There's not a lot there, but have a bit of a look, and you'll actually see a couple of photos of my gorgeous wife Rosemary, who is very camera shy, and you'll probably never see her on the videos, but she's let me throw a couple of shots up of her on the pictures. So stick around with that if you want to. Tomorrow marks 32 years of marriage for us. We were married very, very young, and we've had 4 kids, and she's absolutely gorgeous, and I count myself a very lucky man to have such a beautiful wife as Rosemary. So yeah. Have a bit of a look if we want to have a look anyway at what's there. Being so close to home during holidays has worked out well for us as well, because often I can't get leave during Christmas, because that's the period when we're doing big shutdowns, and that's when we're doing big machinery installs or big machinery modifications. So there's times when I can't get leave, and Rose is being a nurse, often she can't get leave. We've been able to work it out so that either one of us has leave and we're down camping with the kids, and occasionally we get the time off together. So it's worked out well going down there. Little Dan was away at the Australian Scout Jamboree for 2 weeks, and the last week of that stint, we had our first week down at Torquay, and in 16 years we've never ever been down there without kids. So we had a week without kids, and it was very relaxing and very different. I must admit I did enjoy it. Rosemary flew over for the kids' day. They had a parents' day on the Saturday, so she flew over with 4 or 5 other mums to go and do a visit. She misses her kids being a mum, so she went over and had a look, and she was coming out. It's certainly out in the back blocks of South Australia. It was very hot and very dusty, and she was heading back to the hotel, which is a fair way out, and she's broken down in the old ute, and she's been stuck on the side of the road for 3 or 4 hours waiting for the RACV to get it towed. So she shot me a photo of her just covered in absolute caked in red dust, and her hair looked like a straw man off the Wizard of Oz. But she trooped it on, and all's okay, and she's back. So while she was over there, rather than staying down at Torquay, I came back to play in the workshop, and I've never had time, well, not in 30 years, which is how old our oldest is, so I haven't had any time ever on my own at home in the shop. So I came home and spent 2 days of just me time, just doing stuff in my workshop, and absolutely loved it. So maybe something to look forward to when I retire, who knows. Anyway, as I said, stick around, have a look, and see the area where we stay. Moving on to more workshop things, so we're going to continue on with that knob. We're going to do the notching out of that knob. I was going to do that in the milling machine, but I did a setup to notch that out in the lathe that also allowed me to cut the radius on those notches. We're going to counterbore that back in, but we're going to set up in the milling machine here to do our engraving for the index lines. So there's a couple of ways I can do that. I'm going to try first of all with a little D bit cutter, which is one that I use on my CNC router for doing engraving. So we'll set it up and see how that goes, and that's why I've left that that collar a little bit longer so that we can have a play around and see what's best. The other option is I can mount it vertically and use the Bridgeport as a slotter and index around and slot the lines in. So a couple of different ways. I want to try the D-bit cutter first and we'll see how that goes. So we'll get these notches sorted out and we'll come back onto the mill and we'll have a look and try and set up and get this indexing organised. Alright guys, probably a belated wish you all the best for the new year, and I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas, and I hope you all enjoy your time in the shop and your workshops throughout this new year. So, alright, we'll be back in a tick and we'll get into it. Okay guys, see you in a tick.
Righto guys, we're going to start work on the cutting these little notches out of this little knob. There's a number of ways we can do this. The easiest setup would be to put it into a rotary table and just offset it off the centre of the quill, and then just drop down with an ML or a slot drill and just cut them out. But I want to try and put that radius into it. Now I could hand file that and do it that way, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So the plan is that I'm going to set this up with my indexer that I built many years ago onto the back of my back of the lathe, and we'll index that around 60 degrees each time, and I'm going to mark my lines. I've already done the first line there just with the centre finder. We'll then mark our lines around. Then what we're going to do is set this into a 3-jaw chuck and then mount that in a 4-jaw chuck to offset that the radius, and we're going to actually machine those in or bore those notches in. After I've bored them in, I can then come through and then use my little radius cutter to put a nice little radius scallop onto that. Then we can then index this around in the 3-jaw, line up our mark again, and then cut the next one. And we'll just continue around until we've actually got that done. So we'll see how that's going to work out. I'm hoping it's going to work out, but we'll give it a go anyway. It's just something a little bit different, and I'm not going to worry about putting the radiuses on the back end here. I could make up a tool and come in from the back and back cut it, but I'll just leave those the way they are, and we'll do the ones here on the top. Alright guys, we'll get the indexer set up, and we'll get set up to start scribing these lines around indexing in the lathe. Righto, so I've got my indexer set up on the back of the lathe. It's a fairly straightforward thing. It's just got a plunger which engages into the holes, and they're just done with a center drill actually. And I can make up as many of these as I like for any indexing. So I've got a couple of others that I've got made up for other jobs that I've done in the past, and they work really, really well. It's a very, very simple setup. So I've got that located into one of the holes, so we're going to go 60 degrees each time, so it's a 24 hole spacing I'm working on, and I've just marked in red each of the holes that we're going to work to. So we come around the front here, I've got that lined up with that center line that I scratched in, and all I'm going to do is just rotate that around 60 degrees each time and then re-scratch your line. It would have been easier to have not bored this out, I guess, and have a center point to come back to, but I've moved it around a number of times and it hasn't moved the square, so I'm just hoping that each one has pushed the square up, scratch the line, rotate to the next one, scratch the line, and go through. And then we'll go ahead and set up the 4-jaw with the small 3-jaw that we can get our offsets done with, and we'll see if this is going to work. Alright guys, back in a minute. Well, I'll try and stay out of the way as much as I can. Alright, so let's go to the next hole. You guys let me know if this square moves, eh? Well, it's a bit of a mistake there, isn't it? I'll re-blue this again and we'll have another go. I've doubled up on that. Right. Let's go back to the start. Jeez. Right, well, I found a big issue actually. This center finder that I've been using is out quite a bit. So if I was to put a line onto that and scratch it on, so up nice and close to the blade there, and I was to rotate this around, that is out by miles. That is out by miles. So now I hope of trying to get that square set up on the lathe. So I've used this one and I've scratched a line in. That's just cutting the line in half there. I rotate that around. Once again, that's just cutting the line in half there. So I hadn't checked these. They were from a dealer, local dealer who buys stuff from China. They were pretty cheap. And obviously it's pretty nasty because it's out miles. Right, well what we'll do is we'll blue those out again and we'll start from scratch again. That's why my square was so far up the creek when I'm trying to scratch these in. I'm getting double lines when I rotate it around. So something to be aware of. Alright, let's go again. That's good. That's good. Alright, so we've now got that indexed up. I'll tell you what, I've only used this a couple of times and I've never actually checked it, so yeah, when you get tools guys, check them out. Make sure they're not going to give you some false readings like this one has. Right, so now we've got some line work we can set up to. We'll get the 4 jaw put in and we'll get a 3 jaw mounted into that, and then we'll set up an index in the back again that we're going to come back to each time when we rotate this around to cut the scallops. So hopefully it'll become clearer as we go. Let's get into it. Alright, let's have a look at this conglomeration of a setup. So I've got the 3 jaw clamped in by the 4 jaw to give me my offset, which was 91.6 off center. So I've set that up using my height gauge and I've got that pretty spot on. With our lines that we've marked, the plan is that I will line up each one individually and rotate it around, but I need to come back to the same set point every time on the 4 jaw to get this right. So come around the back, I've got that locked off with the indexer, so I've actually marked that one. So each time I will re-engage, loosen off the 3 jaw, rotate that around by hand until I get the lines to line up, then clamp it in again, and then continue through with the bore again, and continue going around until I've got all 6 lobes done. And in between that, obviously when we bore, we're going to set up with our little radius cutter in there just to put that nice little chamfer on, or that nice little radius on. Alright, we'll get set up and get the boring bar in, and yeah, we'll give it a go and see if it works. Right, I've got this set up with the boring bar. I've got this upside down at the moment so that it's cutting in the right orientation. I've already just taken a 1/2 mil off that. I've got 4 mil deep is what I've got to go. We'll run it through and we shall see how we go. Great thing is doing it this way I can at least run my machine forward, so I'm not going to make a mistake. Now, I don't want to run this any faster. There's a fair old counterweight effect on this. Righto, so that's cutting quite nicely. I'll continue this on and we'll bring you back when we're getting closer. Right, we've just got 0.1 of a mil to come off this now, so we'll just index that in and we'll do our final cut and we'll set up for the radius. Alright, so that's come up very nice. Alright, I'll get set up and we'll put the radius cutter in now and just put a nice little radius on that edge there. And we'll see how we go with that. Right, so we've got our little radius cutter set up in here and we'll just start licking this out very slowly. Alright, I think that'll do us. Let's put a nice radius on that. Right, I'll set up for the next one, and what I'll do is I'll continue going around and I'll bring you guys back when we're at the last one and we'll see how everything's looking. Alright guys, we'll see you soon. Righto, we've got one more lobe to do and look, they're coming up absolutely brilliantly. I'll take you through what we're actually doing. So, let's see how we go going handheld here. So, what we do is we come around to our set point, which I've got marked there with the arrow. Just there. We'll just engage our pawl, which it is now. So that locks off our forejaw totally. I'll set you up on the tripod now and we'll just go through the rest of the setup. Right, so we've got our chuck locked off. I'll just release the 3-jaw so we can rotate this around, and I've actually marked an arrow on here so I know that I'm always pulling this towards me to the next line. That's that. So we lock that off. Set up our boring bar first. Make sure we disengage our pawl. As I said, I found out what happens if you leave it engaged. Now we'll come across here and just check our 0. So I get that roughly there. Bring that up and I'll just do a scratch on the OD here. And that just lets me know if I'm within a bull's roar. Right, so you zero that off. We know we've got to come in exactly. Yep, that's beautiful. Alright. What we'll do now is change out our tool for our radius cutter. What I've had to do, I've had to put a little set block underneath there to get the height right. And I might just change the camera over. Now, what I've found with this, it's much easier to do it by hand. And I'll try and work around the camera as best I can here. Alright, that'll do us. So, simple as that, guys. So it's taken about an hour to get all those lobes done. So what I'll do is I'll set it up in the 3 drawer and just give it a bit of a buff over to take off all the sharper type edges. But yeah, I'm really happy how that's come up. Been worth it, I think. Alright guys, we'll be back soon. Alright, so that's the knob all finished off, and I'm absolutely wrapped with how that looks. That is the absolute bee's knees. So that's finished. We've got our screw finished. The next thing I want to do is to cut into here the little indexing lines. I've left this overall a little bit longer than what it needs to be, so I can do a bit of a practice run. Put it in a lathe, we'll part it off to length and then set it up and do it proper. But no, it's That's come up really, really nicely, so it worked out well. I'm really pleased with that. Alright guys, so we'll get set up for the next operation. Alright guys, before I start stripping the table down, I'll quickly show you what's the setup that I've got on this rotary table. It's a Vertex rotary table that I bought 6 or 7 years ago. It was one of the first purchases that I made. I made up the adapter plate for the top, and I've since learned these are called pallets, but I machined this up in the lathe. This is out to the maximum swing of my lathe, and I machined that as a friction drive to get it to the ODs, and it's worked out really well. It's pretty spot on. So that certainly increased the capacity of this, and I've just drilled and tapped half-inch M12s into this, so I can put clamps all over this to hold all the various setups that I use down onto it. And if you have a look at Joe Porosky's channel, he's doing a series now on the rotary table, so if you want to get some really good tips on how to do setups on a rotary table and how to use a rotary table, go and check out his channel. It's absolutely brilliant. Looking forward to that series. I have stepper drives, so I have electronic indexing on both my rotary table and my dividing head. That's the brain box. I said I made this many years ago. There was a hex code available on CNC Zone by a guy called Steve Ward. I think he went by the synonym of Quackers, and I think he's got his own website now. I think he's actually manufacturing these and selling them a lot more progressed down the track than what this one here was. But yeah, this one here I made very, very cheaply. It's it's just got a bit of A4 sheet of paper that I've printed out and laminated for the keyboard cover. So all up, I think the whole thing cost me less than $100. So well worth it for me. It was a good learning exercise. So I certainly, as I said, I certainly wouldn't go back to the manual indexing after using this. And as I said, it does both divisions and also does degrees. So yeah, up to 9,999 even divisions. So it's a pretty amazing piece of kit. All right, I'll break this down and we'll get this set up with the 3-jaw, and I might take you through how I set a 3-jaw up on this to get it concentric to the actual center line of the table. All right, guys, we'll get this broken down and we'll get into it. Right, guys, as often happens in the workshop, to do a job you've got to do a job. I want to mount this 3-jaw up on my rotary table, and I've done the holes that are in here so that they can match my table in some different configurations for some different setups that I do. But I don't have any holes at 120 degrees where I can mount it in my rotary table. I do have a chuck that I mount in my rotary table, which is a 200mm chuck, but I've got that set up with a back plate with the camshafts on the lathe, so I don't want to break that setup. So all I'm going to do with this little 3-jaw, so this is the one that I mount down on my table to do any indexing with the digi readout, is I'm going to make a PCD of holes around here, 3 evenly spaced holes to line up with the slots in the rotary table. And there's no great accuracy in this because I want to be able to move this around very slightly to get it centered up onto the rotary table so that I can lock it down in place. So we'll just quickly go around, create this 3-hole PCD, and then we can get this mounted up onto the rotary table. Alright, done. I'll do a bit of that and give it a bit of a rub on stone. And we'll get this set up in the 3-jaw, on the rotary table. Righto, so we've got our PCD drilled out, ready to put that table on, but what we need to do is ensure that we get that chuck central on this table. So it's concentric as the table rotates around, the chuck's not doing this. And the way I do that is I've just got a dead center that lines up very nicely in that chamfer that's on the edge of the Morse 2 taper hole, and I get that in there, lock it off, and just give a bit of a jiggle backwards and forwards, let it find itself. I'll just nip up the 2 bolts. So that's it, locked into place. Right, I'll go ahead and we'll get the chuck mounted onto it next, and we'll go through the centering of that to the center line of the spindle and concentric to the axis of the table. Righto, so we've got our 3-jaw just loosely mounted on there. I've got a series of jigs that I use on this rotary table, and this is one of the jigs I've got. It's a Morse taper that I've machined up that fits inside there, which has got a parallel section. But I've got different jigs that I can put on there for doing all sorts of radial offsets and linear offsets. So I've got a series of different jigs up there that I use for different setups for referencing for setting up on this rotary table, and it's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate. So with this one here, because that's on a Morse taper, let's pull that right on there. We'll just drop that down inside, get a bit of a snug. Once we've got him snugged up, we can then bring the jaws in on our little round bar. Just lightly nip it. We can go through. Just re-engage that worm. And just go around and dip them up. Right, what we'll do now is I'll put a bit of round bar in there, a bit of precision stock that I've got, clamp it up, and then we'll set up the little lever indicator, and we'll run that around and just see how that clocks up.